Well, as it turns out, none of that was true. All of that was false. And we know that because the DC District Chief Judge, who he mentioned in his false statement to this committee, said, and I'm quoting the judge, July 2025, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee.
This may look like a dispute over paperwork, but it's actually a direct challenge to the integrity of federal oversight. What's really being tested here is whether powerful officials can redefine legal reality to escape accountability. This raises broader questions about how truth functions when institutions investigate themselves. In this video, we'll break down how a single claim unraveled into a confrontation over credibility, law, and the limits of government power.
Thanks, Chairman. My comments today about FBI chiefs testifying honestly and not lying to Congress are particularly relevant in light of your opening statement. Let me start with the basic fact behind all of this, that the current FBI director pled the fifth in the matter where he ended up providing grand jury testimony. We've never had an FBI director come through this committee who had pled the fifth before. As you know, when you plead the fifth, to do it honestly, you have to have a good faith belief that your testimony would subject you to criminal liability, which meant, if Patel was being honest, he had a good faith belief that his testimony would subject him to criminal liability. As that went forward, he ended up getting immunity from the government in order to testify. If this were a court, a civil court, a judge would allow an adverse inference to be drawn against the witness who had asserted the fifth. In Patel's proceedings, we were never even allowed to get to the bottom of the grand jury testimony. Why he pled the fifth, what he said, all of that was papered over as he went through this committee to confirmation. So for obvious reasons, I pursued that question, just as you would, Chairman, if the shoe were on the other foot. And I believe that Patel lied to us in the committee. He said that he couldn't share his grand jury testimony, and I'm quoting him here, because there's a court order on that case, he said. He said again, I can't go into court orders granted by the DC District Chief Judge. And then when I pressed him further, he challenged me saying, you want me to violate a court order? He then went on to say to Senator Booker that his grand jury testimony has been sealed by the Department of Justice, and I'm not allowed to discuss it here. Well, as it turns out, none of that was true. All of that was false. And we know that because the DC District Chief Judge, who he mentioned in his false statement to this committee, said, and I'm quoting the judge, July 2025, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee, unquote. So it sure looks like he lied about that. So in his recent testimony, I asked him again. And now he offered the committee a new and different lie, which is that he had released the transcript already. He said, first of all, I'd love my grand jury testimony to be released. I want it made public. And then he said, I wanted the transcript released, and I will get it to you, sir, to me. I wanted the transcript released, and I will get you the transcript. He said to me, we can confirm that pursuant to my action, that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript. He said the transcript has been released publicly. He told Senator Booker, well, I don't have the grand jury transcript. That's why I released it. So, as it turns out, no transcript was released. He was making up that lie, probably to get away from having to answer our questions. But now we have an FBI director who first lied in committee about a non-existent court order and had that lie exploded by the actual judge who he claimed had him under court order. and then lied in committee about having released a transcript that we all know has not been released. I think on that state of facts, we're entitled to get the transcript that he says he wants us to have, that he says he released publicly, and that the judge has confirmed is not under any court order of protection. So, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you. I know you have a strong interest in FBI chiefs testifying honestly in this committee and not lying to Congress, to try to get to the bottom of what is going on, because those seem like two pretty flagrant and obviously provable lies. And we'll follow up for further assistance to get to the bottom of this. But I don't think it's asking too much to ask the committee's support, to ask Director Patel to do what he says he has already done, which is to release the grand jury transcript of his testimony and provide it to us. Thank you.
The moment that just unfolded in this hearing was not a casual disagreement or a routine exchange of political talking points. It was a direct and devastating accusation delivered with precision when Senator Sheldon Whitehouse laid out his case that FBI Director Kash Patel had told this committee things that simply were not true. He did not rely on rumor or speculation. He cited Patel's own words and then placed them against the written ruling of a federal judge who said plainly that nothing was stopping Patel from sharing his grand jury testimony. In that instant, the weight of the room shifted, because this was no longer about memory lapses or confusion. It was about whether the man entrusted to lead the nation's most powerful law enforcement agency had misled the very body tasked with overseeing him. What Whitehouse described was a pattern. First, Patel invoked a supposed court order to explain why he could not discuss his testimony. Then, when that explanation collapsed under the judge's written statement, Patel changed the story, claiming that the transcript had already been released. According to Whitehouse, that was not true either. And so the hearing arrived at a stark crossroads. Either the director of the FBI was telling the truth, or the documentary record was. They could not both be right. In a democracy built on accountability, that tension is not abstract. It is the line that separates public trust from institutional decay. This moment matters because the FBI is not just another agency. It carries the authority to investigate, to surveil, to bring the full weight of federal power down on individuals and organizations. Its credibility is its currency. When its director sits before Congress, the expectation is not perfection, but honesty. Whitehouse reminded the room that no FBI director before Patel had ever pleaded the Fifth in this way. That alone was extraordinary, but what followed made it more troubling. When someone pleads the Fifth, it is not casual. It requires a belief that answering could expose them to serious legal risk. That fact, standing alone, already raised profound questions. And now, layered on top of it, were claims that Patel misrepresented why he could not speak, and later claimed he had already released information that apparently remained unavailable. This is not about partisan theater. Whitehouse himself said that if the roles were reversed, the same scrutiny would apply. The principle is simple and foundational. When government officials testify, they must tell the truth. Congress cannot perform its oversight role if witnesses can hide behind statements that dissolve under scrutiny. When a witness invokes a court order that does not exist, and when that claim is publicly contradicted by the very judge he named, something fundamental breaks. It sends a message not only to lawmakers, but to the public that the system of checks and balances is being treated as optional. The broader context makes this even more significant. In recent years, Americans have watched institutions strain under political pressure, under public skepticism, under internal conflict. The FBI, in particular, sits at the center of that storm. For many, it represents impartial law enforcement. For others, it has become a symbol of overreach or politicization. In that environment, every word spoken by its director carries enormous weight. Every inconsistency, every contradiction is magnified. When Whitehouse says that Patel offered a new and different explanation and that both cannot be true, he is not just nitpicking. He is pointing to a credibility crisis. Leadership in a democracy is not defined by how much power you hold, but by how you use it and how honestly you account for it. The hearing showed what happens when that standard is tested. Patel told senators he could not speak because of a court order. The judge said he could. Patel later said the transcript had been released. Senators say it has not. These are not gray areas. They are claims that can be checked. And when they fail that test, the damage is real. It weakens the authority of the office, it erodes the public's confidence, and it makes every future assurance harder to believe. What Whitehouse ultimately asked for was not radical. He asked for what Patel himself said he wanted, the release of the grand jury transcript. If Patel is telling the truth now, then providing it should be simple. If he is not, then the refusal to produce it becomes its own answer. This is how accountability is supposed to work. Facts are requested, records are produced, truth is either confirmed or denied. Without that process, oversight becomes hollow, and power operates without a mirror. This hearing was a reminder that democracy is not self-sustaining. It depends on people in positions of authority respecting the rules that bind them. It depends on lawmakers asking hard questions and on witnesses answering them honestly. When that compact is broken, even subtly, the consequences ripple far beyond one room or one official. They reach into how citizens view their government and whether they believe the system still belongs to them. In this moment, viewers were not just watching a senator confront a director. They were watching the struggle over whether truth still has a place in the halls of power. The words spoken here will not disappear when the cameras turn off. They will echo in future hearings, in court filings, and in the public record. And they will shape how this chapter of American governance is remembered. If you believe that transparency matters, if you believe that those who wield authority must be held to account, then this is not a story to ignore. It is a warning, and it is a call. Support our work to expose the truth. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.